Right. So I guess that I can already start with my presentation, Emily.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, and welcome all the participants for today's webinar on the outcomes of the 16th meeting of the POPs Review Committee. This webinar is to Thank you very much. This webinar is to give you the overview of the outcomes of that meeting that was held in January. The meeting was for 6 days, 11 to 16 January 2021, and it was held online due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation. And prior to this meeting, we had pre-meetings held in December 1 to 3 in 2020. And those 3 days, major technical items were introduced, and participants were invited to provide comments on some of the documents. And those documents were made available on the intranet site so that those could be considered during the meetings that took place in January 2021. The interim chair of this meeting was Mr. Peter Dawson from New Zealand, who was identified as interim chair at POPRC 15. We had 182 participants, which is a record-breaking number, because normally we have around 120, maybe 110 to 120 participants when we meet face-to-face in Rome. So we had very many, much more numbers of participants, and that was very much welcomed. 153 observers and 29 members. 2 members were unable to attend this meeting. The committee adopted 5 decisions, which I will be introducing to you in my next slides, and also agreed on the work plan for the intersessional period. The follow-up letter was sent on 18 January 2021, as there were a number of requests for information and comments that are needed for intersessional work. Now, next slide, please. The first chemical is Decloram Plus, which was nominated by Norway for listing. Initially, the chemical naming was Decloram Plus, and it's anti-isomer and syn isomer. However, the committee at 16th meeting agreed that the naming should be simplified to just call it Decloram Plus, as the CAS number itself actually includes all those isomers. The main use of this substance is flame retardant, and it's been used since 1960s in several purposes as listed there, for example, for electrical wires and cable coatings. POPRC 16 considered the draft risk profile prepared between the intersessional period of POPRC 15 and 16. However, the meeting was unable to reach agreement that the information on adverse effects was sufficient to reach a conclusion. Therefore, it deferred the decision on draft risk profile to POPRC 17. The draft risk profile that was amended during the meeting is set out in INF 16. It says 16, but I should have corrected the number actually for the afternoon webinar. The number is actually INF 19 for Decloram Plus draft risk profile. And the parties and observers were invited to submit information on adverse effects on Decloram Plus by 1st of March 2021. The invitation until 1st of March is the additional information on adverse effects, and there was a form that was sent together with the letter. And it is not actually inviting comments on INF 19, which, setting out the revised draft risk profile on Decloram Plus, because according to the work plan, the chair and the drafters will be revising that revised draft risk profile by April, which will be sent to the working groups. So parties and observers do not need to provide comments on that revised version, but in case if they do find some comments already on the INF 19, then that is also welcome, because that could help the chair and drafters to prepare a revised version of the draft risk profile for consideration by intersessional working groups and later on sent to parties and observers. Next slide, please. The second substance here is methoxychlor. This was nominated by the European Union, and it's an organochlorine pesticide used as originally developed as replacement for DDT, and therefore it has wide range of applications as pesticides. POPRC 16 finalized and adopted the risk profile for methoxychlor, and this is set out in POPRC 16.9/add1. The committee decided that methoxychlor is likely, as a result of its long-range environmental transport, to lead to significant adverse human health and environmental effects, such that global action is warranted. So this means that the methoxychlor was now considered as a POP according to the POPs review committee. It established an intersessional working group to prepare a draft risk management evaluation. This will include analysis of possible control measures, assessing the socioeconomic information. So parties and observers are invited to submit information on socioeconomic consideration, which is specified in Annex F to the Convention. The deadline is same as Declarant Plus, 1st of March 2021. Based on this information, the draft risk management evaluation will talk about the availability of alternatives to methoxychlor, environmental cost or social and economic cost and benefit for controlling this substance. And therefore, the information specified in Annex F is very important for the intersessional working group to develop the draft risk management evaluation. Next slide, please. UV328 is the third substance in the presentation today. This is a proposal submitted by Switzerland and for consideration in POPRC 16, and therefore it's a substance at the very first stage for consideration. UV328 is a UV observer or UV stabilizer added to many products such as transparent plastics, coatings, personal care products, and it could also be added to printing ink additive in food contact materials. And this substance, as it is the first stage, unlike Declarant Plus or methoxychlor, it's a first stage of review, and therefore the committee looked at the proposal submitted by Switzerland and applied the screening criteria in Annex D to the convention. And the committee was satisfied that the screening criteria has been met for UV328, and it established an intersessional working group to review the proposal further and to prepare a draft risk profile. Parties and observers are invited to submit Annex E information by 1st of March 2021. Here, during the intersessional period, the committee will then elaborate on its risk profile for UV328, for example, on persistence, bioaccumulation, long-range environmental transport, adverse effects, and so on. Information on use and production of UV328 is also a very important part of the risk profile, and therefore it is much appreciated if parties and observers can collect this information and submit it to the committee on time. Next slide, please. In addition to those substances proposed for listing, the committee also considered the matters that were requested by the Conference of the Parties for the substances that are already listed under the Stockholm Convention. And that includes a review of information related to specific exemptions for decabromodiphenyl ether listed in Annex A, and for short-chain chlorinated paraffins also listed in Annex A. COP8 in 2017 adopted the listing of those substances, and at the same time it adopted the process for the review of information related to specific exemptions, as those substances were listed with many specific exemptions, and some of them were even longer than 5-year period. And POPRC 16 completed the review of such information and finalized the report, and requested the Secretariat to submit that report to the COP, and those are set out in INF 17 and INF 18 of the POPRC document. And committee also requested the Secretariat to prepare a draft decision reflecting the recommendations of the committee contained in those reports for consideration at 10th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to take place later this year. So those reports that has analyzed the information related to specific exemptions that were submitted by parties and observers contained a set of recommendations that relates to those substances. And those recommendations will be part of that draft decision on exemptions of agenda item related to exemptions of the Stockholm Convention COP10. Next slide, please. Another substance that's already listed under the Stockholm Convention and the COP requested to do additional work was on PFOA, its salts, and PFOA related compounds. PFOA was listed at COP9 in 2019. And in addition to the listing, the COP adopted decision SC 9/13 on further action related to PFOA. In section 3 of this decision, the COP referred to draft indicative list of substances covered by the listing of PFOA, its salts, and PFOA related compounds. As you have seen in the definition of those substances, it could cover a number of substances than just 3 that you see in the name of those chemicals. And therefore, the indicative list excuse me, was prepared, and it has been already available from the POPs review committee, and it is in the POPRC 13 INF 6 add 1. And then the committee requested the Secretariat to update this information based on the information submitted by parties and observers. The Secretariat was also requested to update this indicative list in consultation with the POPs review committee and make it available online and update it periodically. And therefore, the Secretariat submitted this draft indicative list to the POPs review committee in order to consult them of the updated list. This list was contained in INF 12 of the POPs review committee document. And the committee looked at this document, including additional comments that were submitted by POPRC participants between the pre-meetings and the actual meeting of the committee. The decision on this item by POPRC decided that the document INF 12 needs to be further revised based on the information from parties and observers. Therefore, members, parties, and observers are to submit comments on that draft updated indicative list by 28 February 2021. Then the Secretariat will prepare a further revised version taking into account the comments submitted by parties and observers and members. And this revised version will be sent again to parties and observers for comments. The second round of comments deadline is 30 April 2021. And so that means that you will have two rounds of commenting period for this indicative list before it can be finalized for uploading on the convention website in advance of the COP10. Before making that indicative list available, the Secretariat will consult the chair and the vice chair of the committee as it was decided by POPRC. Next slide, please. The last substance that's already listed in under the Stockholm Convention, and the committee was tasked by the COP to review, was brominated diphenyl ethers in Annex A to the Convention. This includes commercial penta-BDE and commercial octa-BDE that was adopted in COP4 in 2009. The process for the evaluation of BDEs was adopted in COP6 in 2013. It's set out in decision SC 6/3. The review was necessary because these substances are listed with specific exemptions for recycling of articles that contain or may contain penta-BDE or octa-BDE commercial mixture, and this exemption will expire in 2030. And prior to that expiration, the Conference of the Parties undertakes review every other COP meetings, and the next review is scheduled to take place at COP10. And therefore, in accordance with this process, the Secretariat developed the draft report on the evaluation of BDEs, and the COP's review committee was to provide comments on this draft report. Now we have received such comments, and therefore we will revise the report and submit it to COP10 for consideration. Next slide, please. So as a follow-up to POPRC 16, the report of the meeting was produced in document POPRC 16/9. And just this week, the English advanced version was made available on the website of the Stockholm Convention, and the language versions will be available in coming month. Call for information on the comments was sent in a letter dated 18 January 2021, with mostly the deadline 1st March 2021 or 28 February 2021, inviting information on adverse effects of Decloran Plus, information for risk management evaluation for methoxychlor, and information for risk profile for UB328. And finally, the comments on the draft indicative list of PFOA, which is set out in E12. In relation to this PFOA document, those who have attended in the meeting are also of the POPRC 16 is also aware of additional comments that was already submitted by other members. If you also have comments on those, please do submit, because the next step will be for the Secretariat to prepare a revised version. So any useful comments or guidance from parties and observers and members would be very helpful to prepare a better revised version of the draft. POPRC 17 is tentatively scheduled to take place from 27 September to 1st of October 2021 in Rome, back to back with CRC 17. And I think that you're all aware of the uncertainties in the situation relevant to COVID-19 pandemic, and therefore the Secretariat will be consulting closely with the Bureau of the POPRC in order to assess the situation and inform the participants well in advance of the situation evolves. As you might recall that for POPRC 16, this was also very similar or even more uncertain status back last year. And for taking the decision on POPRC 16 to be online, the Bureau members actually consulted the POPRC members several times. And therefore, we will follow the same approach, that we will keep the POPRC members very close consultation before taking any decisions on the modalities of the meeting in September or October 2021 for POPRC 17. I think this is my last slide, but yes. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand or open your microphone if you don't know how to raise your
Katarina
hand.
Bradsmith.